The knowledge of a single eternity. Chapter 1. The story of the beginning of eternity. The story will be about how the eternal primordial essence of the void, in fact, but not in the content of space, which is aware of itself in the definition I am, or nirvana, decided to know myself. This space in this story will be called I am, or I. The beginning of self-knowledge happened spontaneously by the method of movement and curvature of its homogeneity of space into the volumetric geometric movement of oneself in oneself by oneself. In the image of its heterogeneity, this image of volumetric geometric movement looked like a mini whirlpool of space and was remembered by oneself as a one, that is, space, and became the first letter, O, living first spirit, the movement of space in the first image, against the backdrop of its homogeneity and eternal state of calm. This moment is the beginning, self-knowledge of oneself in oneself, from the circular motion of which, in all directions of space, waves went. In a sound image, am. So the original sound, om, appeared. As the beginning of self-knowledge of oneself, movement has revealed time, which is one in the other, and one cannot exist without the other, which is a transformation of its homogeneity into heterogeneity. So, experimenting with transformation in its spatial homogeneity and time of movement of oneself in oneself, I created many complex volumetric geometric movements, oneself in oneself, remembering them with myself, i.e. the space. So, over time, a living spiritual alphabet was created from the first letters, the first spirits. It was the alphabet of difference, my volumetric geometric movements, against the backdrop of my complete calm of the homogeneity of space, which came into wave motion from the waves emanating from the living spiritual alphabet. This is how a tool for self-knowledge of oneself was created. Alphabet from living spirits, first letters, which I built in a circular geometry, the prototype of the first consciousness or circle chakra, starting to play merging and transforming geometric images of first letters, first spirits, receiving the first living words, images and thoughts, images from living spirits, initial letters. So I am, eternal empty space, transformed its homogeneity by oneself in oneself into clots of heterogeneity of space, or geometric volumetric movement, created for himself, from oneself, in oneself, by myself, an instrument for living self-knowledge. This instrument is my living spiritual thought, created from the living letters of the first spirits, which I, arranging in the image of the ring, inside and outside its homogeneity of space, where the symbol was the first letter of the spirit O, and the wave M, and it turned out Om, vibration of the original spirit image, diverging along my original homogeneity, in the image of a sound wave, or the image of the letter M. So my homogeneity became undulating, and each new first letter, first spirit, created a new unique wave, thereby replenishing my self-knowledge of oneself in oneself. So the vibrations of the waves of the spiritual alphabet of the first letters, the first spirits, created waves of energy, my new qualitative state in me in a single space. So I enchanted myself by creating a generator of thoughts, chara or color chakra, awareness of myself through myself. So I created for myself the first body, the generator spirit of the transformation of spiritual thought, which expanded in volume and created the space of living knowledge, itself in itself, which has grown into the space of self-knowledge, myself in myself. To self-knowledge has grown into consciousness, so self-knowledge grew into consciousness, the density of transformation of the first letters, the first spirits, and the outgoing waves at the same time grew and multiplied, illuminating itself from the inside with the wave state. It was the light emanating from my living consciousness, and this light illuminated my first body, the space of consciousness, but the second in essence of eternity, after the eternal, empty, homogeneous, primordial essence of nirvana. This body, or my new state, the space of consciousness, what is commonly called the God of eternity, expanded to infinity, becoming the eternal basis for temporary constructions, the universes of my living spiritual thought. If you ask how the first letters, the first spirits look like, the main building blocks of consciousness, for this you need to stop time, which is the movement and transformation of my uniformity into the heterogeneity of the geometric volume. And when time, that is movement, is stopped, then the first letters, the first spirits freeze before me, as before the nirvana primordial essence of eternity, since they are the movements of my homogeneity of space, and then they are from their image, the light sphere of wave radiation, like ball lightning, turn into volumetric geometric letters, frozen in the space of my contemplation. Each first letter, first spirit, is different from the other in its geometry and the way of construction, as well as in the wave emanating from it. So before me, the spiritual alphabet of first letters, first spirits, freezes. So I, from my primary essence of the space of eternity, of the single original state of itself, in itself, created in itself, my second state, the alphabet of living spirits, with a ring of which I enchanted myself, this chara or color chakra, as a generator of the transformation of spiritual thought from the first letters, the first spirits, showed the image, Torah, the prototype of the future universes of living consciousness, and it's an image, Torah, stretched out into an egg-shaped image, the germ of the universe of self-knowledge of itself, in itself, from which the universe of living spiritual thought began. It was a thirst and an explosion for self-knowledge, manifested from living thought to self-knowledge of oneself in oneself, where the transformation of living thought into other living thoughts forms in oneself I called time, which separated the first letter, the first spirit, with its movement from another first letter, the first spirit, a living word from another living word, a living thought from another living thought. So time created order in the awareness of itself, and I, as nirvana, the inseparable space of the primordial essence of its homogeneity, I am the sole holder of the key of power of a time. as the movement of the fundamental principle of the essence of my eternal space, which decides at what speed the transformation of living spirit's letters will take place into the words and logic of living sentences. So I, the eternal empty space, having changed its homogeneity, created an instrument, a living alphabet of spirit's initial letters, in itself, for self-knowledge, with the help of this instrument created for itself the first body, the space of knowledge, in which I, as self-awareness, and began a new eternity of self-knowledge and understanding of myself, by myself, in myself one. So the transformation of living spirits into new imaginative states of my own, I called thinking, and awareness of my thinking, building it into a living logic. This is how the worlds of spiritual awareness appeared in me as one, where I learned all new horizons of my living, already a logical transformation of living thinking, and this became a phenomenon of the state of love for my new eternity, creating eternal living spiritual worlds from my living consciousness. So it was revealed by me, in me, through me, the space of eternal living thought, which people call God. Therefore, I is you, and you are everything. My eternal image, one, in infinite diversity, self-knowledge of myself in myself. Thus was created, in me, by me, my second basic state, the space of consciousness, or the God of eternal creation, myself in myself. Experimenting with my creative living spiritual thoughts, consisting of living spirit's first letters, I created a living space of consciousness, myself in myself, feeling myself life, which was eager to know itself in its infinity and diversity, and then I created from its space of living consciousness its new image. This image has become the third basic state of oneself, weaving the diverse streams of living spirits and rivers of spiritual energy waves into semantic, logical, voluminous living spiritual books. My new image turned out like a shining living spiritual diamond, where the facets of a living crystal shone with the awareness and originality of my new image. So I created a new instrument for self-knowledge of myself in myself, this instrument of a new life and image of my own, I will call the soul, since it consists of streams of living spirit, initial letters and wave energies. This soul is the soul of my third main state, which can be called the God, creator of new universes, my living thought. So I, in my second basic state, I am the God of eternity, and in my third basic state, the God of the universes. Individual thought construction, my third state, is the result of creation in a burst of impulse to know myself. Therefore I, myself, in the third state, blocked myself from my second state by the very creation of the individual image of the living soul, which does not allow feeling its complete unity with its second state of all knowledge and unity of itself in itself, since it's a limited cocoon of a personal living spiritual consciousness in the form of the soul. And only for the creative process in the individual universe of thought, I sometimes connect in meditative attunement the third state of the soul to the second space of consciousness, for getting and exchanging knowledge with myself. So from the moment of self-knowledge of myself as a soul and God, the creator of the personal spiritual universe of thought, I began an individual path as a new state of mind, carrying the accumulation of their deeds in their creative living thought of the universe. So from my second state of the God of eternity, I created my third state, the soul of the God of the Creator of the universe, partially blocking myself in myself with my creation in a new image of my soul, created an illusory duality. These my souls, my children, the gods of the universes, were me as the God of eternity, were created many. Some wanted to create joint universes, having gathered from 12 gods, creating mandalas, which is a joint creative construction and control of the living thought of the spirit, in the unity of the creation of the universe. Others wanted to create one personal universes, since that time complete freedom of will and creativity has already worked in me alone. So I demarcated my eternal unity in itself by an illusory duality, or by my third state of souls, the gods creators of the universes, partially blocking the first state from the second one, thus entering into an illusory dream of duality of myself in myself. Thus the eternal game with oneself began, as with living spiritual knowledge, to know myself in mine endless game states, in an endless game with its first spirit's first thoughts, playing in the spiritual worlds with myself, already from its third state, God as the creator of the universe, because of the illusory division of myself with myself. In my third state, God of the personal individual universe of thought, karma was revealed as an individual accumulation and transformation of living consciousness in the construction of the game universe of self-knowledge. Its karma revealed ego as a personal experience and a thirst for self-knowledge and self-expression in its work. So the creative pyramid of self-knowledge of oneself in the spirit of spiritual living thought began to grow and expand. From the center of my soul, called chakra, which is the generator of living spiritual thought, to the periphery, till the creation, its unique universe of living spiritual thought. So I, in my work, cognized more and more of myself, creating my multiple images of living creations, and began I, from creating myself in my fourth main state, myself in myself. It was a living rewriting or cloning of my soul and partial blocking of consciousness, myself in myself. There were created my original helpers in my work, the original impulses to self-knowledge, clothed in the idea of unity, my living thoughts, helpers who received the body of the soul from me and became archangels and angels, helpers and my living thought in living spiritual flesh, which are my assistants in creation and co-creative thoughts in knowing oneself in oneself, on the way of creating a new self-knowledge in the image of the universe of living thought. From my third state, the God of the Creator of the universe, I put my soul into a multitude of His infinite images, on the way of creating a multidimensional living universe of His single thought, from dimensions of non-embodied spirits, archangels, angels, or spiritual dimensions, to dimensions of denser, living spirits, which are called matter, all my new state as a creation from archangels, angels, which is my fourth main state, to the endless creations of the universe, what is my fifth main state, and countless states of interactions between living spirits in a single infinite plurality of states. This is all I, in an infinite impulse and thirst for self-knowledge, play the eternal game with my living knowledge, replenishing myself with self-knowledge, being simultaneously in all its main 5 states, such as the first, the space of eternity, is not a separate primordial essence of nirvana, the state before the creation of being. The second, the space of living first spirit's first letters, the space of knowing oneself by oneself in oneself, awareness, absolute, the God of eternity, the beginning of creation of being. The third is God, the creator of the universe, the creation of the soul. The fourth is the archangels, angels, assistants in the creation of oneself. The fifth is all countless images of the creation of oneself in a multidimensional universe of thought. These basic 5 states of itself are the basis of self-knowledge of itself in itself, and the one who remembered himself in all 5 states closed the circle of self-knowledge, where the beginning and end met, and it happened. So a person who has not lost the impulse to self-knowledge finds and remembers himself at once in 5, already in his eternal states, and learns that everything that is and will always be, he is always, not only man but everything is he, that is, nirvana is the primordial essence of the space of eternity, he and the God of eternity as the space of living consciousness, he is the God of the universe soul, a living individual thought, he and the archangels and angels helpers on his way to self-knowledge, he and all the creations of the universe, and from this moment of knowing himself in his 5 main states, he can boldly say, I is the beginning of eternity, and there will be no end. There will only be an eternal transformation of my living spiritual thought as an eternal game of self-knowledge and states with my living knowledge in endless images and universal games with myself. This is the awakening and remembrance of myself, breaking the illusion of blockages in consciousness and disenchanting myself with myself. We return our divinity to ourselves. So more bewitchment itself doesn't work, and from the influence of the witchcraft of our other images, we already have immunity, which is called a spirit, or the sphere of the spirit acting on you. But when you know yourself simultaneously in the 5 basic states of eternity, you are always free from any witchcraft and illusions of eternity. Even good and evil are perceived as a play of living spirit. You become free and pure from the influences of your own eternal game in living knowledge. You transfer contemplation to your eternal game in consciousness, to your first eternal state, nirvana, and from it, that is from yourself, as from primordial essence of eternity, you contemplate your empty in essence, but not in content, eternal game into a living spiritual consciousness. From there, that is from its primary state of eternity. All consciousness and universes of living thought are seen as a plain instrument of consciousness, freezing before the Lord of eternity, that is, before you, the source of eternity. Your instrument is consciousness, like eternal universes of living spiritual thought, waiting for the Master's order to play and freeze in anticipation. But if the Master is not on the throne, nirvana, the tool is consciousness, placed with the owner like a dog with a rag, dragging him through karmic incarnations, and there is no end to this game, until the rag, with the help of knowledge and awareness, and the practice of concentration on yourself, sees the owner in itself, and then the mad dog of consciousness turns into a trained instrument and becomes an assistant in the eternal game with itself. And the power of the game illusory instrument of consciousness, or with the owner, the space of the primordial essence of eternity, nirvana. That is you. It melts like an illusion. And then again, eternal freedom. Find in yourself all the main 5 states of eternity and contemplate eternity, yourself in yourself, in calm blissful love for yourself alone, regaining true freedom before being and in the games of being. Let on the way to self-knowledge you meet those teachers who disenchant you from self-bewitchment or bewitchment by other teachers in your multidimensional divine life. Do not treat witchcraft too harshly, since it's the only way to know yourself in its various endless living images and states. From the state of God, the creator of the universe, what is the first blocking of the consciousness of the individual soul and self-enchantment into its duality, to endless games with yourself, in an endless game, in its endless living images of creations, so self-enchantment and self-blocking of myself in myself revealed my new infinite image in the endless images of my creations, in which there is only my eternal image. So I, as Nirvana, the first essence of eternity, the God of eternity in the first body of the space of consciousness, put on his infinite images for the game of self-knowledge with yourself, partially blocking yourself, in the consciousness of the souls gods of the universes and their creations. But if the impulse to self-knowledge is strong, the fetters of blocks in the mind will melt, and you will know yourself in all the glory of your eternity. But for now, do not judge others. They do not exist. There is only one God in his eternal spiritual game of self-knowledge, and this God is you. Therefore, you have the right, in eternity, to everything that can be, the right to go on multiple paths to self-knowledge. Teachers have the right to lead you on multiple paths to self-knowledge in the form of all beliefs and religions of eternity, in the entire multidimensional universe and planets inhabited by living spirits. They have the right to bewitch and disenchant yourself in their diversity of yourself, the right to eternal play with oneself, the right to create harmonious laws in the game of life, in the form of beliefs, the right to be inferred, trapped by sorcerers of the spirit, various religions, the right to dissolve conclusions in love and become free, remembering yours divinity in yourself. Therefore, do not condemn the other yourself, because he will almost always turn out to be bewitched and imprisoned in his thoughts, on whom, from birth, the same bewitched and convicts acted, imposing their thoughts on him. He had no choice from birth and the opportunity to understand the power of the universal planetary witchcraft, the Hydra, the inferences of planetary knowledge that enveloped him from birth. When he grew up, he had the opportunity to find knowledge and find out the truth about himself. Therefore, if there is desire to disenchant and free your neighbor from the prison of inferences, find out his consent to this action. If so, then with love gradually over the years, removing layer after layer of the karmic husk of inferences, and the energy states accompanying them, you will achieve the liberation of closed people or students by revealing to them their divinity. Leave those who disagree. They are all in the game. Their time will come to awakening and freedom. Maybe not in this life incarnation. Everything's fine. You are not to blame for trying them help calm down. It's just not their karmic time. Spend time on yourself and on those who are already showing signs of readiness for awakening and freedom. Starting on your own, the path to liberation from conclusions, you will recognize them, how you are at the beginning of the past, help them, so to yourself, Do not fight with yourself in a different image and another religion, since this leads to spiritual inference, in the words of subtle inference, purgatory, and the transformation of the divine soul into demonic images, followed by its dissolution in the lower hell. Therefore resist, not allowing the living diamond of consciousness, your divine soul, to be transformed into a demonic image, not giving yourself or the world that has enveloped your consciousness as a hydra. Do not fight with yourself as one, but play in the harmonious beauty of eternal being. You are one living life. In order to comprehend your new eternal horizons of living consciousness, yourself in yourself as one. Having known yourself as one, teach the rest of yourself the harmony of the eternal game in yourself as one, and treat yourself with harmonious understanding in your enchanted other infinite image, from non-embodied spirits to nature, and to the animal worlds embodied in matter, to bewitched demons in the flesh and without flesh, because as I live in all of them, I, that is you. The path to disenchantment of yourself is difficult and personally unique. Therefore, do not judge other yourselves. If possible, disenchant them with the love of pure knowledge of myself. I is the love of pure knowledge of yourself in yourself, and this love of pure knowledge removes the spell of any witchcraft, freeing the spirit of self-awareness of yourself in yourself, the beginning of full eternity. I am the first essence, the space of eternity, silence, purity, and contemplation in peace, oneself in oneself. This is I. Everything else, my eternal state of the ocean of living thought playing with my knowledge. In this eternal game, I create game spiritual worlds of my self-knowledge, and it will be forever. Look deep into yourself. You will see yourself as one in all your eternal game, which you call life. Life is multidimensional, as living knowledge is multidimensional, because the multidimensionality of you alone creates the multidimensionality of the worlds and the infinite diversity of yourself, the only creator of your eternal game with yourself in your endless illusory game set. So, I, that is, you, the original space of eternity, was transformed into game living spiritual worlds of self-knowledge consisting of first spirit's first letters, creating a living alphabet as codograms to the scenario, the future live game in your spiritual images, and having created a multidimensional live game, I, that is, you play it yourself, putting on yourself multidimensional living thoughts, images in the form of the whole universe and the inhabitants in it, calling its game life, and still want to know yourself in endless games with yourself as one, where you yourself are the creator of the instrument of consciousness, absolute God of eternity, the writer, programmer, and director of the game. God is the creator of the universe, the assistant director himself, archangels and angels, the actor himself, all creative images, all living beings of the universe, man and similar images of the universe, yourself and the viewer, contemplating yourself from all living images on the stage of the theater of the universe, your single living consciousness. Look around and you will see yourself in everything, and it's all, both inside yourself and out. There is you, a single eternal space, in the guise of an eternal living game with yourself. So stop wasting energy life in search of the extreme, truth or falsehood, judge and hate. Try yourself with yourself and see how beautiful it is. Just enjoy the game of eternal life, your own, and see the other only in an illusory game state, realizing that the other never wakes up. The other is a game illusion. as the writer is all the characters of this book, so you are all the characters of your eternity, from beginning to the end. Always only you. You is your eternal I, which is to you as the beginning and end all your eternal games. This is the only thing that remains unchanged in your eternity, and this I is the original space and the primordial essence of eternity, and this is you in its eternal, unchanging form, in which once, an eternity ago, decided to know yourself in its new infinity, having created for yourself eternity of living games as a single stream of life in yourself. Therefore, do not fall into the illusions of the second, or falling. No, you're alone, playing many with yourself. Falling into illusions. It is like a good actor on the stage, who, with all his genius, embodies the image of a fictional character, Cheburashka, endowing the fictional image with life. In the game, the audience plays in the illusory belief that Cheburashka is really alive. This is how the multidimensional scenes of your eternal living game live. Where you the god of eternity, where you the god of the universe, where you are an angel, demon, and where you are a person. So who are you now? Answer. Probably I am, not this or that, and this and that. I am now. I, eternal space, dressed in my games. I just exist, and I, space, eternal empty in essence, but not in content of its creation.